welcome to a new episode of the Diaries of Everything Ching. As always, make sure you have your beverage. You know I do not discriminate, okay? It could be hot, it could be warm, it could be cold. I'm not gonna lie, I did say this in an episode before, but it is cold. So you may prefer the hot or the warm. I'm just saying, but I don't discriminate, okay? So today I wanted to talk about something I feel like we don't talk about a lot, but I kind of touched on it in an episode. I don't know if it's gonna come out before this episode or afterwards, but essentially I was just saying quick backstory. I don't want to give the episode away obviously, but there was a part in the episode where I was discussing friendship bumps on the road and how you deal with it, and typically how that shapes your friendship moving forward. So I want to talk about that today. So I want to talk about like friendship bumps on the road because I've had some. Okay, I've had some quite recently, and it's not a fight per se, right? It's just this moment where you think about the friendship and you start to find yourself at a crossroads. Like you're kind of like, I don't like where our friendship is going. I see the value in this friendship and I want to figure out, but can't seem to figure out how to get out of this rut. And I know people have the same issue in their marriages, in their relationships with their partners, where it's just that moment where it's like you love the person, you know they're a great person, but there's just something about this particular conflict that's putting me in a space where it's like, I don't know what to do. And in severe cases, it's almost like I don't even know if I want this person in my life anymore. And at that moment, it's just like, okay, you're definitely in like panic mode. You're emotionally panicking. You're literally emotionally panicking. And it's like you feel like the best thing to do is to just cut the person off. And while that might solve that issue, what's going to happen if you have the same issue with another person? You can't just cut everybody off when things get rough. You can't just escape. You can't just run. And so then it comes to you starting to. This is why I say with certain friends, it's like study. Always study the people in your life. If you care about them enough, study them. Pay attention to how they respond to certain things that you say, how they talk about problem solving. Because obviously, if you have enough conversations with someone to be like, oh, well, my thoughts on this is how I would handle it. So pay attention to that. Pay attention to who they are when they're upset. Pay attention to how the conversation looks like when they calm down. And pay attention to what they feel resolve looks like. And when you bring those notes back to the table and you start to peel through some of those notes, a lot of times the answer to the resolve is sitting there. Whether it is by way of pattern, whether it's by way of tying two things together, meaning, a lot of things that we do are defense mechanisms for certain traumas that we've experienced. And so sometimes it's not intentional, but if it's intentional, why is it intentional? Now, I'm only saying to do these things if you care enough to save the relationship. If you really don't fuck with the person and you would rather them out of your life, this doesn't apply to you. This is for people who actually value the relationship. There's something of value, I should say, to the relationship that you want to save, right? So you go back and you peel back the layers, and sometimes the way they act is in that fluff or in that stuff, I should say. And knowing how to approach a person after figuring that out while also respecting your own boundaries and not wanting to trigger anything for yourself can help a lot of those issues. You hear a lot of people when they talk about resolving issues with loved ones, they say, this happened, and I had to go back and look at myself and try to figure out why I reacted that way. Why did it make me so upset? And, it kind of brings me back to a moment when I was young and, this happened to me and that happened to me. And I said to myself that I'm never going to let somebody do that to me again. So, this particular action is a result of that by way of me trying to protect myself from further hurt, literally. And so once you start to realize that certain things aren't intentional, again, this is only if it's not intentional. If it's intentional and they just don't fuck with you, you hear what I said before. But you see that it's not intentional, it makes it that much easier for you to find common ground, talk to the person, and communicate. I'm an over communicator to the point that it's probably overwhelming to some, but I just feel like I would rather consistent understanding other because I feel like if you understand enough, you talk enough, and you care, you'll retain a lot of the information. And I feel like the more information that you retain with a person, assuming they're being real with you, it's that much easier to deal with conflict, right? And again, a person is going to show you who they are when they're upset and in the middle of conflict. And they're also going to show you how much they value you in that conflict, because there's a lot of situations where people get into shit and a person will cuss and cuss and cuss and cuss and go on, but maybe they want to like punch the person, but they won't even think about it. I would never put my hands on this person. Or they want to say certain things, but they just won't say it. It's not to say like they're biting their tongue. It's just that's not in their mental Rolodex to even say to you. Like they're not even on that type of time with you at all. That is far from where they're at. They're not trying to hurt you, but whatever the situation is, the situation, even if you take low blows, there's certain people that's just not going to hit certain things because of that respect for you. But there's some people who just don't give a fuck. They will say everything, literally to the point where it goes from an argument to them just beating you down and beating you down and beating you down and beating you down, right? So that's why paying attention is important. I mean, obviously you're in the moment and you're rah, 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 but when you're done and you calm down and you reflect, pay attention to yourself, because the person that you are in that moment when you're upset kind of speaks to the type of person they bring out of you. Because conflict is going to be bad, but like after the conflict and you talk to the person, do you feel heard? Do you feel like this person respects you? Do you feel X, Y, and Z? And keep those things as mental notes, because once you get to these points where you're kind of at a crossroads, that's kind of when you bring all that information back to the forefront to try to figure out if it is something that you want to save or if it's something that you just want to, kick rocks. Because everything will be there. You'll be clear-minded, you're confused, you're trying to unravel some shit, and then things will eventually start making sense, and then you make your decision. But it doesn't always work when the other person don't really do that homework, but sometimes when you have a conversation with someone based on whatever it is that you've learned and you talk to them a certain way, they start to realize that you know certain things, and that kind of helps the communication style. Even though it's different, it's like there's some level of common ground kind of happening, because they're starting to recognize that you understand their communication language a little bit better. So then they can talk to you in that way. And some people pay attention to you and they can speak your communication language. So then as you continue to grow your relationship, you teach each other's communication languages, so that when it's time to resolve issues, you can both understand what communication language to use. But that's just my personal opinion. And that's what I did. I brought all the homework to the front, and I peeled back layers and we had a conversation, and the conversation went well. And I just feel like it's just another brick to put on the foundation, because you can't have a strong relationship of any kind without a foundation. And I truly believe that once the foundation is rocky, you're kind of nearing the end of your relationship of whatever capacity. So tell me your thoughts. Tell me how you've dealt with bumps on the road with your friends. Now, my this particular episode is, I'm kind of going back and forth. I'm not going to lie to you, but the overall thought of this episode is understanding how to deal with bumps on the road from both kind of capacities. Even though I said, if you don't want the friend can kick rocks, there's so much different parts of doing this process that will bring back that question again. Is this somebody you want to be cool with still? Yes or no? And then you pick yes, you keep going. And then here comes another point. But do you want to be friends with them? Yes or no? So that's why I keep bringing it up. But this is my overall thoughts on what to do when you want to keep the relationship. Okay, guys, I'm not going to lie. I'm rambling. So I'm going to end it here. Have a good night. And until next time, cheers to a new episode.